Grimble the Yeti had never liked summer. In his snowy homeland, the sky was perpetually gray, the wind howled through thick pine forests, and the temperature rarely rose above freezing. Life was simple and chill, literally, just the way Yetis liked it. But Grimble was an adventurous soul. Deep down, he dreamt of discovering what lay beyond the perpetually frosty peaks. Most Yetis scoffed at the idea of leaving home. After all, who would willingly trade the comforting cold for a land of sweaty sidewalks and scorching sunshine? But Grimble was determined to experience everything life had to offer, and so he packed his bags, primarily large ice cubes, a few toothbrushes, and a snowball maker, waved goodbye to the icicle-laden doorways, and set off to find someplace new. When he arrived in the big city, an unassuming sun-baked downtown sprawled out beneath a blazing sky, he discovered that people there had found ways to combat the sweltering heat. There were umbrellas the size of small cars to shield from the relentless sun. Vendors sold all kinds of cold, sweet treats, popsicles, sorbets, frozen yogurts, and a multitude of ice creams and more flavors than Grimble had dreamt possible. The sidewalks shimmered under the haze of the heat, sending city dwellers scrambling for shade any chance they got. At first, the Yeti didn't stand out as much as he expected, given the extraordinary variety of tourists, street performers, and eccentric locals. Of course, people did a double take upon spotting his hulking, furry figure. It was not every day one saw an 8-foot-tall snow monster wearing surf shorts and flip-flops. But in that city, surprising sights happened often enough that Grimble simply drew stares of curiosity mixed with mild amusement. The first challenge was finding a place to stay. Hotels typically had a strict no oversized mythical creature policy, or so the front desk staff at one posh building politely informed him. After trudging from one lodging to another, leaving soggy footprints shaped like giant paws on each red-carpeted lobby floor, Grimble found a small, run-down motel that had a vacancy and no shortage of disregard for standard policies. The manager, an old woman with thick glasses, barely blinked when Grimble appeared at her counter. She just handed him a key for a ground-floor room, presumably because anything higher might test the elevator capacity. While the mattress sagged in the middle and the walls smelled faintly of old coffee, Grimble was grateful to have a roof, albeit a hot one, over his head. Summer in the city proved more overwhelming than Grimble had anticipated. He tried to take lovely afternoon walks around the neighborhood, but the punishing heat reduced him to a Yeti-shaped puddle of fur within minutes. He learned that city dwellers had rules about personal space, no matter how cramped the sidewalks got. The Yeti couldn't help his size, though, and with every turn he inadvertently bumped into people, signposts, or the occasional fire hydrant. Yet with each apologetic grin, the hustle and bustle melted away, replaced by stares of surprise that turned into grins right back at him. Urbanites realized that even in a place where personal comfort was fleeting, there was something endearing about a giant Yeti panting in search of an air-conditioned building. One day, despairing from the unrelenting temperature, Grimble meandered along the downtown strip, wiping sweat from his brow with a fluffy forearm. He passed store after store, a fancy dress boutique, a pizzeria with lines out the door, a corner market stacked high with fresh fruit, and more coffee shops than any creature needed. Yet despite the presence of ice cream parlors, each one had a line so long it practically wrapped around the block. Patrons toted waffle cones dripping with sticky sweetness, kids whined for seconds or bigger scoops, and the servers worked furiously to keep up with demand. Grimble watched the teeming crowd, feeling that unique fire in his belly that always spurred him to a new adventure. A notion began to brew in his mind. He realized that he could help these city folk in the same way he'd helped his fellow Yetis back home whenever the caves got too warm, which, for a Yeti, meant about 10 degrees below freezing. Grimble had always been the maestro of homemade ice cream in his small Yeti clan. While others specialized in building igloo additions or crocheting frost-resistant socks, Grimble spent hours perfecting unique flavor combinations that usually involved snow. True, the average Yeti's taste ran more toward minty cold essence or sub-zero swirl than typical human fare, but Grimble had a creative mind. The city dwellers, he reckoned, had a serious sweet tooth. If there was one thing he could rely on, it was that a giant furry creature who could produce near-endless amounts of ice would have a knack for chillin' treats. He ran with the idea. His first plan was modest, a small ice cream cart on the corner. He wrote down a shopping list: a pushcart, preferably sturdy, a big freezer, some mixing tools, a friendly bell to ring, and, of course, the ingredients to make the best ice cream the world had ever seen. Acquiring a pushcart turned out to be the hardest part. Most people looked at Grimble and refused to rent or sell him anything. Apparently, the concept of a Yeti with an entrepreneurial streak took some getting used to. However, he eventually stumbled across a friendly junkyard owner who was more than happy to part ways with a battered metal cart. Never mind that it had once been a hot dog stand and was bright neon pink, to Grimble, it looked perfect. After he replaced the hot diggity dog sign with a lopsided cardboard placard reading ice cream, it all felt official. He tested out a whimsical bell that produced a merry jingle so folks would know a treat was close at hand. Before bed that night, Grimble planned out his flavors: classic vanilla chill, double chocolate avalanche, strawberry blizzard blast, and a newcomer, Yeti surprise. The last flavor was something he had been experimenting with back home. The recipe came from a Hush Hush Yeti tradition. It involves swirling sweet cream with a slush of glacier water, then adding crunchy bits of caramel and drizzling it with a sauce made from a secret mountain berry that tasted like sugar and sunshine. Grimble was sure it would be a hit. He spent that evening happily mixing up batches of ice cream in the motel's tiny kitchenette, occasionally plugging the sink and dumping in extra ice to keep the environment as cold as possible. Sure enough, by dawn, he had churned out enough frosty goodness to fill the largest freezer box the cart could hold. On the morning of his big debut, Grimble took his cart to the downtown strip. Sweat glistened on his fur from pushing the cart just a couple of blocks. Perhaps not the best start to an ice cream enterprise. But he found a perfect spot near a busy crosswalk, right across from office buildings. Grimble absolutely radiated excitement. He saw flustered office workers trudging to their offices with damp collars, kids yanking on parents' sleeves for something sweet, and tourists fanning themselves with pamphlets as they squinted at maps, all in search of relief from the blazing sun. Grimble rang his bell once, then twice. Heads turned, brows furrowed. Slowly people noticed the towering furball next to the neon pink stand. A few cautious steps forward, then more curious onlookers joined in. Childlike wonder began to spread across faces. "Good morning! Ice cream for everyone!" Grimble shouted, giving his best toothy grin, which, while earnest, revealed a row of large triangular teeth that might have appeared menacing if he weren't wearing a tiny chef's hat perched precariously atop his fuzzy head. The onlookers paused, possibly pondering the wisdom of approaching a massive Yeti offering cold confections, but when a particularly bold teenager and diehard dessert fan stepped up, asked for a scoop of double chocolate avalanche, and nearly swooned from delight, a chain reaction began. People flocked to the stand. They marveled at how a Yeti had come up with ice cream so divinely refreshing. Kids giggled at the cotton candy-scented Yeti surprise. Tourists filmed Grimble with their phones, capturing the moment they received an enormous scoop of luscious strawberry blizzard blast. The crowd thickened. Office workers on their coffee breaks strolled over, initially suspicious of anything not labeled artisanal chai latte, but the second they tasted Grimble's vanilla chill, they became momentary converts, praising the velvety texture. Even the city's long-standing ice cream vendors, noticing something unusual in the competition, wandered by to check this new phenomenon. A few were nettled at the Yeti's sudden success. Nobody liked discovering a brand new competitor who came out of nowhere and was already drawing lines around the block. But Grimble was gracious. Instead of seeing rival street vendors as competition, he saw potential collaborators. He even offered to share tips on how to keep melting to a minimum. Something about carefully controlling the ice crystals, a technique only a Yeti could master. Initially, the other vendors were suspicious, but Grimble's sincere kindness and unstoppable optimism melted their hearts in a way that ironically matched the summer heat. As days went by, Grimble's small operation turned into something bigger. The lines grew longer, people started calling him the Downtown Yeti, though Grimble always insisted his name was quite pronounceable. Children loved hearing about his homeland, imagining towering ice-capped mountains and cozy Yeti dens. Grimble recounted episodes of bowling with snow boulders, and an annual tradition involving sliding down glacier slopes on giant leaf sleds. In turn, the locals introduced him to city amusements. He tried a hot pretzel once and nearly fainted from the heat, but found it strangely addictive anyway. The synergy was heartwarming. Within a week, the street corner was jam-packed from midday to late afternoon. Reporters appeared from local news stations interviewing Grimble about his success. Flustered but excited by the attention, he'd managed to muster a friendly wave at the camera while explaining how he whisked together fresh ice cream with a technique he'd perfected in the frozen caves. When asked how business was going, Grimble grinned widely. "It's super chill," he joked, to the laughter of the crowd. Humor seemed to be his secret power. Aside from producing sensational ice cream, Grimble rapidly realized a single cart wasn't nearly enough. At night, he was working triple time in the motel kitchenette, whipping up gallons of Yeti Surprise, each new batch devoured the next day by throngs of overheated people. Phone calls poured in from local firms wanting to cater events, from birthday parties to corporate functions. The city was enthralled by the novelty plus. The Yeti's ice cream truly was top-notch. Grimble decided to scale up operations. He found a small storefront that had once been a dry cleaning shop. The rent was steep, but the location was perfect. A spot near an outdoor park that bustled with families, joggers, and dog walkers every weekend. The landlord was skeptical until Grimble showed him dozens of enthusiastic social media posts praising the Yeti's chili delights, with people raving about the best ice cream they'd ever tasted. On one particularly scorching day, Grimble even served the landlord a sample of Strawberry Blizzard Blast so refreshing that the man promptly forgot any reservations he had. They signed the lease that afternoon. Renovations were a comical challenge. Sure, a Yeti could handle the heavy lifting. Grimble easily moved oversized furniture out of the space. But installing freezers, hooking up electricity, and making things up to city code was an odyssey in itself. One mishap involved Grimble attempting to hang a neon sign in front of the shop. He slipped off the ladder, sending it rattling across the sidewalk and nearly flattening a mailman. Apologies ensued, and the flustered mailman eventually accepted a free scoop of double chocolate avalanche as compensation. Another comedic episode saw Grimble trying to assemble a giant walk-in freezer that was delivered in pieces. He spent half a day reading an instruction manual riddled with diagrams and text in 6 different languages, each more confusing than the next. Finally, he gave up, took a big sigh, and let his instincts guide him. If he could assemble an igloo in a blizzard, how hard could a freezer be? He hammered, twisted, and cranked until somehow it all fit together perfectly, and then stashed inside more of his secret berry sauce and custom churners. The day of the grand opening arrived, complete with a newly painted storefront featuring an adorable cartoon Yeti holding an ice cream cone. Balloons bobbed by the door and passers-by paused to look. Grimble, decked out in a crisp white apron, felt butterflies fluttering in his sizable stomach. He'd never thrown a big party before. The commitment was intimidating, but he was determined to do it in style. He set up tables draped with blue cloth, arranged napkins embroidered with tiny snowflakes, and hoisted the biggest, baddest tub of Yeti Surprise onto the counter, beckoning for all to share in the sweet coolness. When he rang the bell at noon, the turnout exceeded Grimble's wildest dreams. Families formed a line that snaked down the block. Office workers ditched their desks for early lunch breaks. A musician from a nearby cafe strolled over, playing a carefree jazz tune that lent a festive atmosphere. Even some people from the local zoo staff appeared, wide-eyed, half expecting Grimble might have been an escaped exhibit. Grimble welcomed them all, dispensing scoop after scoop with unstoppable cheer. He'd trained a few volunteers, enthusiastic local teens on summer holidays, to handle the crush of excited customers. He taught them how to produce the perfect swirl, preventing meltdown in the dog days of summer. Between jokes, laughter, and the continuous scraping of metal scoops on frosty surfaces, the event danced along with a joyful vibe. People nearly fainted from delight upon tasting a brand new flavor introduced for the grand opening: Honey Maple Frostbite. It featured delicate ribbons of sweet honey threaded through a creamy maple infusion that left the palate dancing. Grimble took immense pride in every new creation, naming them with winter-themed flair. Arctic Dream, Polar Peppermint, and Glacier Grape. He made sure to keep his signature Yeti surprise on the menu, of course, but proudly showcased the entire range of flavors. The biggest hits sold out in minutes, but new batches emerged from the back, replenished by the Yeti's unstoppable hustle. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. A few local ice cream shops complained that the Yeti was unfairly hogging the attention. One rumor circulated that Grimble was using monstrous powers to freeze the air around him, undercutting the competition. Yet these whispers quickly dissolved once folks realized that Grimble hosted a weekly ice cream exchange, inviting other vendors to bring their own specialties and collaborate. He generously shared the spotlight, offering to stock a rotating guest flavor from local parlors. The result? Downtown's entire ice cream scene boomed. Each vendor brought their own twist, creating a vibrant tapestry of confections. Thanks to Grimble, more people visited the area for sweet treats than ever before. The competition turned into camaraderie, albeit with some friendly rivalry, much to everyone's benefit. Whenever Grimble managed to catch a break in the rush, he found himself marveling at how drastically his life had changed in such a short span. He'd ventured down from the mountains, expecting to face scorching weather, cramped sidewalks, and suspicious onlookers. True, all those things had come to pass, but in the process, he'd found an unexpected place for himself in the city's heart. He cherished the friendships he was forming, like Mr. Delgado, who dropped by daily just to chat about last night's baseball game and snag a scoop of mint glacier twist. Or Carla, the local dog walker whose Great Dane adored Grimble so much that the enormous dog jumped up and tried to lick him every time they crossed paths. And then there was Lucy, a lively 5-year-old who wore a bright pink princess tiara and exclaimed how she wanted to be a Yeti princess when she grew up. She even insisted on giving Grimble a handmade drawing of the two of them building snow castles. Grimble pinned it on the shop wall and patted Lucy's head with his big paw, trying not to get teary-eyed. Still, there were inevitable comedic mishaps. Like the day the air conditioning unit in the shop broke, right at the peak of midday mania, customers began fanning themselves desperately in line. Grimble tried to stay calm, repeating his mantra of chill. But the temperature soared, the ice cream threatened to melt at record speed. In a stroke of resourcefulness, he quickly fashioned a makeshift cooling chamber near the freezers, standing guard with a massive block of ice he conjured from behind the counter. The customers stared, wide-eyed, as Grimble wrestled it into position. Once in place, the block lowered the room temperature enough to keep the ice cream from turning into puddles. The local plumber eventually arrived to fix the AC, only to stand dumbfounded in the doorway, his mouth gaping at the spectacle of a giant Yeti hugging a giant chunk of ice like it was his best friend. He fixed the unit in record time, no doubt fueled by the improbability of the entire scenario. Not all comedic incidents took place inside the shop either. One hot afternoon, determined to give back to the community, Grimble decided to visit the local retirement home, pushing his neon pink cart full of freshly churned flavors. The seniors were delighted, forming a line on the home's shaded patio. They giggled at the whimsical giant, who scooped out treat after treat with unstoppable enthusiasm. One witty gentleman used his cane to tap the side of the cart, joking, "I haven't seen a cooler sight since the Ice Age." Grimble offered him a free second scoop. Afterwards, the staff gratefully told Grimble that the home didn't have a large enough freezer to store ice cream for all the residents, so the Yeti's surprise visit was a highlight, a simple slice of joy on a scorching day. This warmed Grimble's heart more than the hottest summer sun ever could. Over time, the city felt a shift. People spoke more kindly to one another while waiting in line. Strangers struck up conversations about the new flavors. Families used Grimble's shop as a partial remedy for bickering kids or worn-out parents. The bright pink cart that started it all became an iconic photo op for tourists who posted snapshots with Yeti ice cream. Even the mayor took notice, dropping by one weekend for a surprise inspection, which was mostly an excuse to try the Yeti surprise. After finishing the bowl, the mayor shook Grimble's paw wholeheartedly and declared that the city had never tasted anything so magnificently cool. Then came a day Grimble had never quite prepared for. The phone rang, and on the other end was a representative from a major national dessert chain praising his genius and politely inquiring about business partnerships. Grimble's eyes widen at the thought of having his own brand of Yeti Surprise in supermarkets across the country. The representative tried persuading him with talk of expansions, investors, grand marketing campaigns, maybe even a plush Yeti mascot in every store. Grimble's heart pounded. He had never envisioned fame or fortune. He simply wanted to share chilly delights with folks who needed them. Now, faced with a chance to become a national phenomenon, he hesitated. He asked for some time to consider. That night, as he sat in the back of the shop after closing, surrounded by the hum of freezers and the faint scent of waffle cones, he thought about his original purpose. He missed the snowy mountains sometimes, it was true, but the city had become a second home thanks to the friendships he'd made. The business was thriving not because it was a corporate empire, but because it was personal. People came for ice cream, yes, but also for the sense of community. The new chain might expand his horizons, but it could also turn his pride and joy into a corporate product, losing the spontaneous warmth of personal interaction. After a while, Grimble realized that what truly mattered was the joy shared in each scoop that he handed out with a personal flourish. So when the representative called back, Grimble politely declined the big commercial pitch, opting instead to keep his shop local, focusing on forging deeper ties with the neighborhood. The corporate people were baffled, but Grimble felt lighter than an alpine breeze, knowing he'd made a decision that matched his heart. It wasn't all serious introspection, of course. He still stumbled into comedic exploits daily, like when he tried to develop a new bubblegum flavor only to have the entire freezer fill with bright pink foam that threatened to explode. Or when he visited the city's largest indoor mall to do a surprise giveaway and accidentally caused a traffic jam of stroller-pushing parents enthralled by the giant Yeti. In each misadventure, Grimble managed to spread laughter and icy refreshment, forging memorable moments. As the summer heat wore on, the line sometimes ebbed, sometimes grew, but Grimble's shop settled into a beloved community staple. Nearby office workers started a friendly tradition of Yeti hours, dropping by at 3 p.m. for a midday pick-me-up. College students tested out the free Wi-Fi in the seating area, ironically sipping hot coffee alongside their ice cream just to see how the two extremes blended. Local dog owners brought their pets for pup cups with dog-safe ice cream. Grimble even tried to control the lines with a ticket system, but folks insisted they didn't mind waiting as the line was part of the charm. A chance to meet neighbors and share stories. One particularly scorching late summer day, an out-of-town mother and young son ventured into the shop. The pair looked exhausted from hours on the road, clothes rumpled, faces glistening. Grimble welcomed them with a gentle smile, offering a sample of Yeti Surprise on a tiny spoon. The mother's eyes lit up and the boys squealed with glee. They sat at a corner table, savoring every frosty bite as if it were a magical elixir. When the mother came over to thank Grimble, her voice had a slight tremble. She explained their car's air conditioning had broken on a cross-country trip, leading them to the city in desperate search of relief. Stumbling into Grimble's ice cream shop felt like finding an oasis in a sizzling desert. Grimble, touched by her earnestness, let them each have a second helping on the house. The mother left with tears of gratitude shining in her eyes, reminding Grimble why his shop existed in the first place. By the time leaves began to turn crisp and the summer scorcher gave way to cooler breezes, the shop's popularity hadn't waned. If anything, people found new reasons to indulge. Autumn flavors occupied the menu, featuring cinnamon-laced pumpkin snow spice and caramel-infused harvest freeze. Business soared, and the city no longer viewed the towering Yeti as an oddity. He'd become a daily fixture, pulsing with laughter and kindness, a beacon of sweet comfort in a metropolis that could sometimes feel anonymous and frantic. Grimble still wrote letters home to his Yeti kin, describing the wonderful chaos of city life. He sometimes enclosed freeze-dried sprinkles or tiny chocolate chips, though he doubted they'd maintain their flavor after the journey. In response, his parents teased him about forgetting the joys of permanent winter. Grimble would shake his head fondly. Someday, he told himself, I'll invite them all down here for a taste of the city's summer madness, confident that they'd realize the city's warmth was more than just the heat. It was the warmth of human and Yeti connection, of shared smiles, and of strangers turned friends. And so the Yeti shop thrived, continuing to serve scoops of frosty goodness that brought people together with each creamy, sweet spoonful. The air might have been sweltering, the sidewalks might have been packed, but around that neon pink cart and eventually inside that cozy storefront, something cool and magical lingered, sealing the deal on an unforgettable summer that nobody in the city would forget anytime soon. With every flavorful creation churned right in the heart of town, Grimble the Yeti managed to serve more than dessert. He offered a tasty piece of delight on the hottest days, proving that if a giant from the frostiest mountaintops could fit in downtown, there was room for shared laughter and neighborly cheer in even the most unexpected places.